In this video lecture, we're going to discuss audience analysis. It's a basic tool in the Technical Communicator and Interactive Designer's personal toolkit. Let's talk about the idea of audience. Anytime that you create something that goes out to people, that is either going to be a single person or it's going to be a group of people. When you decide to make this document or artifact, whatever it may be, we're going to talk about that what it may be in a little bit. But when we talk about going to the audience, you have to define your audience very, very carefully to make sure that your audience will respond well and be able to use that thing. If you say that my audience is the general public, that's, no, don't do that. The general public is so wide and varied it means nothing. So, for example, we've got a Tibetan yak herder, a cacao farmer from Ghana. You've got a Los Angeles movie executive, and you've also got Cadillac, the homeless fellow who lives behind the dumpster at 7-Eleven. I have met Cadillac, actually. He was a very interesting fellow. But in any case, what do these people have in common? The answer? Well, they are humans, bipedal, carbon-based life forms who, yeah, that's really about it. They don't have anything in common. So when you define audiences, avoid general public, it's for everybody, it's for anybody. No. Define specifically who you are talking about. The thing is, when you're going to create some sort of a text, or I should say an artifact, a book, a document, whatever it may be that's going to these audiences, you need to understand what is it that you are creating. So I'm going to use the word text here and sort of walk you through the idea. We're going to get a little postmodern. When you hear the word text, you're probably used to hearing it in two ways. It is words on a page, or it is a book. So, for example, we have this image of a book here. The words on the page of the book are text. The book itself is a text, like in your textbook. You're probably used to these ideas. Let's get a little deeper, though. Take a look at this. The image of the book, that itself is a text. It's not a real book. It's an image of a book. Therefore, when you look at this image, you are gathering ideas just from the image and not the thing itself. So the image is a text. What else is a text here? The PowerPoint slide itself, that is a text, right? So we have a text of the PowerPoint slide that contains a text of the image, which contains a text, which is a textbook, which then contains text, which is words on a page. Again, text is anything that you can look at or listen to and you draw meaning from. It's anything you can quote-unquote read. Let's get a little deeper. What else is text? Well, how about this video? This video lecture is a text. You are gathering ideas from it, you are reading it, you're interpreting my words, you're interpreting my tone of voice, you are interpreting the images on the screen. These are all making meaning for you. So the video is a text, then it contains the PowerPoint slide, which is itself a text because you look at a PowerPoint slide and you say, oh, this is some sort of a lesson, I'm supposed to pay attention here. That's a text. And as we've said, there are texts inside text inside text. We also have examples such as this. We have words on screens. There's texts on texts. With a Kindle, does it have a different meaning? Does it carry a different meaning than a cell phone? I would argue the answer is yes, it does. How about this thing? The ring. What kind of ring is this? Well, we look at it and say, in America, I recognize that as an engagement ring, I believe. So, okay, fair enough. What does it mean? When you look at this text, what meaning does it carry? Well, it means I love you. Okay, what else? It means I have a whole lot of money that I can drop 3 to 4 months of my salary and buy pretty rocks. Yes, that's what it means. So it's not only I love you, but it's a sign of, yeah, I can afford to keep you. It is also, and think about this, a sign from way back when, a sign of ownership. If you, to quote Beyonce, put a ring on it, then that means that you now own it. Now, do I actually suggest that anyone who puts a ring on somebody else's finger now owns that person? No. They are, however, somehow bound to that person, yes? Whether it is a quote-unquote promise ring, it is an engagement ring, it is a wedding ring, it is a congratulations for having my kid, here's a pretty rock to put on your finger, another one. Hey, these things, they're all indicating some sort of bond between people. So that's one of the things that we are indicating here that is carried, the meaning that is carried by this particular text, the ring. How about this? Read this text. Tell me what it means. It's a dresser. Okay, cool. It's a dresser. What about that? You're supposed to put stuff in it. Cool. Like what? Clothes. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to reject that, and I'm going to put this in my kitchen. Wow. Wait a minute. What? Exactly. You're probably wondering what's going on. Why would this weirdo put a dresser in his kitchen? Well, if you think about it, it's got a big flat surface for prep and storage. It's got lots of nice drawers for storage, out of the way. It's got a curved bottom. I can clean under it. Well, hey, yeah, sounds great for a kitchen. Why not? Well, it's just weird, right? So when we read these texts, there are ideas that are carried along with them. There are denotations and connotations. Denotations are dictionary definitions. Connotations are meanings, internal meanings that are pulled along. So when we look at the dresser, for example, we know furniture, storage, but its denotation is just furniture for storage. Its connotation is it belongs in the bedroom. How about this thing here? What is it? Some of you are saying it's the Statue of Liberty. But is it? No, it is not the Statue of Liberty. It is a plastic souvenir that represents the Statue of Liberty. What does the Statue of Liberty itself represent? Liberty? Yes, exactly. So we have a text of the little plastic statue that usually indicates I've been to New York City and I've seen the real Statue of Liberty. Then that real Statue of Liberty in itself represents this abstract idea of liberty. These are all texts. So we have a text that directly represents a text, which is kind of cool. How about this one here? You're looking at it and saying, it's a hippie. Well, it's not really a hippie. It is a Halloween costume of a hippie. But it has the interesting things that a hippie would indicate, and we're going to be able to read this and say, this is what a hippie is about. So let's read this text. First off, starting at the bottom and moving up, we've got the blue jeans. We're used to people wearing blue jeans now, but at the time that the hippies were around, which is actually the middle to late 60s and on to the early 70s, quote unquote respectable people didn't wear blue jeans all the time. This was just not done. So this was a rebellious thing to do, wearing blue jeans all the time. Similarly, the buckskin fringe vest, the sort of peasant blouse, these are indicating something. They are not just pieces of clothing. They have messages. These texts say, I am rejecting my conformist, everybody just get along and, now, plastic, fantastic. I want to get away from that. I want to get back to natural materials, man. I want to get back to the land. Okay? See what's going on here? These are symbols of rejecting mainstream society. Then the necklace. You may not know what it stands for, but that little chicken foot symbol there, that means peace. It has a deeper meaning though. It's actually two symbols put together that make that. The two symbols stand for ND, nuclear disarmament. In other words, ban the bomb. Again, rejecting the stance of the government. Man, we want peace. We don't want this war thing. What else is going on in this text? We've got the facial hair, the long hair. This was a really big deal back then because, especially in the 50s and 60s, it was a very conformist time in America, and for the most part, men, they had short hair, very short hair. Look at pictures, especially in this the space program and the like. All those guys, They had just buzz cuts, and you could probably set your watch by those buzz cuts. The hippies, they rejected that. They're getting away from it. So when you read this text is it's essentially a big middle finger to corporate America, to mom and dad who want you to be straight, I'm not saying not be gay, but be quote unquote straight, be boring, be a square, get a job, be an accountant. I'm going to reject that, man. Okay? Then, last thing, check out the tie-dye. The tie-dye itself is just fascinating because it carries a whole lot of meaning. Now today, we're used to seeing tie-dye, like, oh yeah, swirly colors, la la la. But what did it mean at the time? It meant, dude, like, I'm tripping, I'm on acid, oh, swirly colors, yeah, let's listen to some Dead, man. Notice, this is a text in itself. This guy is loaded with symbology. It's just way, way cool to read this guy. So the point is, about texts, anything that you look at and you can draw a meaning from, that is a text. You need to be able to read texts. Speaking of texts, we have some text here on the screen. I'm putting it here because I want to illustrate. You can go from looking at an existing text, you can analyze that, and then figure out who is it for. You can also go the other way around. You can look at some sort of person, some sort of audience, analyze that audience, and figure out how to create a text for that audience. Let's look at some ways you can use to analyze existing texts. I'm going to give you some steps here. You probably want to write these down. The first thing you want to do is examine the text. What is its format? What are its contents? So, how is it presented? What does it say? Then, determine the purpose of that text. What is it for? What function is it serving? Then you want to identify the people who are likely to encounter that text and be affected by it in some way. So they're going to read it, discuss it, refer to it, what have you. The point is, they need to have some sort of impact. They need to have the text impact them in some way. Then, once you've done all that, ask yourself this question. Do the text's format and contents match the intended purpose and the audience? If the format and contents match the intended purpose and audience well, then you know it's a good text and it's most likely going to succeed. If they don't match up, it may not be a good text and it probably won't succeed. For example, let's take a look at this text. We have Officer Friendly. So let's examine the format and contents of Officer Friendly. We have slick back hair. We have shades so you can't see Officer Friendly's eyes. There's the badge of authority, the crisp white shirt underneath the crisp tailored uniform. We have stripes indicating authority. We have the military crease. And then we have the Sam Brown belt. It's got all sorts of utilities. There's a gun, there is pepper spray, there is a baton, there's a walkie-talkie, and in the back there are handcuffs. What is the purpose of this text? Well, Officer Friendly, generally speaking, the purpose of Officer Friendly is to maintain order, to go around and make sure everything is as it's supposed to be, to help people who need help, and to, well, take care of the people who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, to put them back in line. What's the potential audience for this? Well, potential audience, it's the general public, yeah? No, it is not the general public. Where is Officer Friendly from? Then consider, who is going to encounter Officer Friendly in particular? Is it people just walking around? Is it people in stores? Is it people who are calling for help? Is it people who are causing trouble? Okay, we're starting to narrow down then the potential audiences. So, once we've done all that, we can figure, is there a good match between the format and contents and the audience and the purpose? Do these things match up? Well, as I think about it, I think the answer is yes, because Officer Friendly appears to be ready to go and bust heads if necessary, and be friendly if necessary, and take care of business. So I would argue that, yeah, this particular text is appropriate for the audience and purpose at hand. Let's then compare Officer Friendly to Officer Goodtime. What's going on with Officer Goodtime? He's got this ridiculous hat that no cop has actually worn for years, and it's not a very good hat either. We have the funny looking badge. It's on the wrong side of the shirt. The chevrons are upside down. The shirt itself is shiny and wrinkly. That is not anything like what the real cop looks like. We have the utility belt of a sort, but there's nothing on it except a pair of handcuffs that can't be deployed. Oh, well, let's also look at the police belt buckle with a picture of handcuffs. Yeah, no. And then we've also got the baton. Ooh, check out that baton. It is bending in his hands. Finally, check out how the shirt closes. If we look at Officer Friendly on the left, it's a man's shirt, isn't it? It buttons from, it's got the buttons on the right, they feed through the holes on the left. We look at Officer Goodtime on the right, and he's got snaps. Also, those snaps are done with the right hand on top. That seems to be like the women's blouse style. Why might it be that way? It's probably so he can take his right hand, because most people are right-handed, reach around, grab that lapel, and rip that shirt off with one big swing of his arm. So, considering all this, is Officer Goodtime appropriate for the same thing as Officer Friendly? The answer, definitely not. Officer Friendly is good for patrolling the streets. Officer Goodtime is probably good for, well, patrolling the bachelorette party. So, given the circumstances, if there is a bachelorette party, this one, highlighted now, Officer Friendly, is going to show up if Officer Goodtime fits the occasion a little too well. Let's look at some examples with pictures and words. Here's a PowerPoint slide, just an example of a generic PowerPoint slide that might be appropriate for a given audience. Who is the given audience here? Well, let's analyze the text. We look at it, we say, okay, it's very stark, seems very to the point, very serious. It's not a very fun font. It's businesslike. It's not stern, but at the same time, it's it's very sober. So probably something business. Middle-aged people who are serious-minded. That seems like a reasonable guess. How about this? Who's the audience for this one? Well, let's see. Those letters are really large. They're rounded, sort of friendly, happy shapes. Oh, yes, it's the dreaded Comic Sans, isn't it? So we look at this thing, audience. Who's the audience for this particular slide? Probably children. How about this slide? Who's the audience for this slide? We look at it, we say, well, those letter shapes, they seem, they're non-standard, so they're not very serious. They're a little, sort of edgy and, not quite confrontational, but kind of. So who would appeal, who would like this? Who would it be good for? Maybe teenagers. Yeah, that may be a good answer. Also, I'm going to flip back for just a second here. Take a look at that color scheme, black on white, and that color scheme, white on black. This white on black color scheme is actually harder to read, especially for older eyes. So if we have a younger audience, this would be appropriate for that younger audience. How about this slide? Who might it be appropriate for? It might be appropriate for doing a presentation to your grandmother's knitting club. I'm guessing probably not. So who might it be appropriate for? Maybe somebody who's into heavy metal. Yeah, that might be an answer, or something of the sort like that. How about this one? When I show this PowerPoint in face-to-face class, I always ask my students, all right, be honest, if this would apply to you at any point in your life, raise your hand. So far, I've had only one guy in all the years I've been using this raise his hand and say, yeah, I would have really liked this when I was a kid. Now, please note, we want to be open-minded, we want to be respectful, we don't want to be exclusionary, but at the same time, we do realize that some things are gendered. We push things on girls that we don't push on guys, and vice versa. So, odds are, when we look at this, we say, yeah, this is really kind of girly and silly. It would probably appeal to a fairly young girl, let's say somewhere between 4 and 8 years old. That might be entirely appropriate. Just as a side note, I've lost it over the years in copying this thing, but those flowers, they used to have sparkles all around them, sort of golden blinkety sparkles. Who would this be appropriate for? Take a look at this slide. Well, we look at it, it looks very high-tech, doesn't it? Well, what about its high-tech? Well, the color scheme is, it's kind of masculine and sort of technological, and it's got the 01010101 binary in the back, and ooh, the word audience itself, it's in that sort of digital lettering font. Okay, yeah, this might be appropriate for a computer audience. Or I shouldn't say an audience of computers, but people who are techie and into computers. They might like it. Speaking of, take a look at that background. Reminds me of a joke. There are only 10 kinds of people, those who understand binary and those who don't. If you think this joke is funny, nerd, welcome to the club. If, on the other hand, you don't get it, that's okay. We'll talk about it in class. We can go the other way around as well. We can then create new texts, and we can analyze our audience and then create new texts that fit that particular audience. So here's the steps. Number 1, you want to analyze your intended audience. Figure out, who are they? What do they want? What do they need? Where are they? When are they? Why are they using it? Think of any factor that's going to influence how your audience will receive or interpret that text that you're presenting to them. You're then going to assemble all the details you can think of when you analyze your audience and make a detailed profile of your audience. You're then going to build your new text around this analysis, this profile you've built. Say hello to Nigel here. Nigel is a sewer worker, and he is shoveling out a quote-unquote fatberg in the London sewers. This actually happens. A whole lot of cooking oil goes down in the London sewer, the wet wipes in particular. These things actually form into giant plugs that clog the sewers. The last few times, I'm trying to remember the number of tons, these things set like concrete, literally, and they have to chisel them out by hand. They said it was something like, was it 200 tons of fat and wet wipes a mile? Yeah, it was just gigantic and disgusting. So, anyway, Nigel is taking care of this problem for him. His job is difficult and dangerous, so you have been hired to prepare some job safety documents for Nigel. You need to analyze him. Figure out, if I create a document for him, what is it going to be like? How do I need to prepare it so that he will actually want and be able to use it? Pause the video here for a couple of minutes. Look at this picture of Nigel. Figure out, what do you know about him? Keep it realistic, but try to figure out, well, who is he? Where is he? What does he want in a document? When would he use it? Where would he use it? Why would he use it? Get these ideas down on paper, then come back and we'll talk and make a list, and I'll show you some ideas. So pause the video now, come back with your list. Okay, thanks for coming back. So let's analyze Nigel. Nigel, he's a shoveler of congealed grease in the sewers. Wow, hard job, sweaty job, disgusting job. He's probably not a college grad, doesn't mean he's stupid by any means, but he's maybe not superly high educated. He's not reading to accomplish anything fun, he's reading to accomplish a task, particularly if he's looking at safety information. He's probably going to then use your safety information if there's an emergency. He's going to use this document when he is either tired or scared, especially if something goes wrong, he's going to need it. The document itself is going to need to be fairly small so he can access it. The sewers aren't particularly large. Sewers are very dark, especially if something is going to go wrong. He's got that light on there, but he needs to be able to read this thing in a low light condition. It would be a good idea to have high contrast because low contrast won't show up, especially in the dark. Big print will be easier to read than small print. He'll probably want more pictures than words because, again, reading a whole lot of stuff underground in the dark when he's freaking out would not be easy. You therefore want to keep any language, any words that you have brief and to the point. You'd want to make the document waterproof, probably greaseproof as well. At the very least, you want to have a very non-slippery surface, so if there's something going on, he needs the document, he isn't going to let it slip and let it fall into the muck below and lose it. So we've looked at Nigel. We've figured out all these things about him. It's not that hard, is it? So now that you know about him, you can then take all these ideas, figure out, all right, so to do this, I need to make the document this way. And then you would create that document, create that artifact, whatever it needs to be, whatever format it needs to be, whatever it needs to contain, so that Nigel will be able to use it and like it, not just be able to use it, but use it well. So if we look at these pictures, this picture of the dogs, you could look at these dogs and you say, okay, these are dogs or texts. I can figure out what the audience, who the owners are, and figure out what they're like. I can figure out these, if I were going to create a document for the owners, how would I go about doing so that would appeal to them? That's the end of this video. So to recap, you've learned a couple of things. You've learned about texts. Again, a text is anything that you can look at and gather, you can quote unquote read, gather information from. You've learned how to look at an existing text, analyze it, figure out if it is appropriate for the audience, and you've also learned how to look at an audience, analyze that audience, and figure out how to create a text for that audience. That's what audience analysis is all about.